So as Kieran mentioned, we have a very large multidisciplinary team. So we obviously have the technology partners, but we have a clinical team as well. And to try and incorporate both of these into the intervention, it definitely has its difficulties, but the rewards that you can reap from it is really fantastic. So as a health psychologist, when I think about the technology that we have available to us and all of the different components that Kieran has brought us through, that we can really give a huge amount of data, feedback to patients, but to embed health behaviour change in each of those components is really something that can help drive the person to, first of all, initiate the behaviour when using Pathway, but maintain the behaviour, which I think is very important, and where sometimes the fantastic technology, people might not maintain the use of that technology, and that's where health behaviour change can really help us maintain using the technology, which enables people to reduce their risk factor behaviour. Okay, so that kind of brings me to this next slide, where in everyday life we have so much data recorded. Sometimes we don't even know the data that's being recorded. So smartphones, wrist-worn sensors, but this study here found that without a behaviour change strategy or program behind the technology, about 40% of users stop using the technology. And I know myself from using and trialing different types of technology in the development work for this, that without something to constantly have that behaviour change running in the background, it just isn't as effective. So I want to bring you through kind of how a patient would come in through Pathway and how the health behaviour change aspect of it would work. So just say we have patient Pauline, she signed up to Pathway. As Kieran said, there's a 4-week familiarisation phase in the hospital with cardiac rehab staff that she's familiar with, but then you come to a clinical consultation when you're starting Pathway. So this is where we have the technology is augmenting the care. So you still have the face-to-face aspect as well. So there's 3 aspects to the clinical consultation that I'll bring us through. So the lifestyle assessment, a physical activity behaviour change consultation, and patient goal agreement, which is very important. So first of all, the physical activity behaviour change consultation. So this is really like an exercise consultation. We're using an evidence-based approach and going through key parts. So decisional balance, where we're weighing up the pros and the cons of engaging in the healthy lifestyle behaviours and engaging in physical activity. But this is a very, I suppose, realistic and honest conversation for the health professional and the patient, where they can talk about where they've had issues before. And then we can come to the goal setting, where talk about, because when they're in cardiac rehab, they're actually at the recommended level of exercise, and things have been going very well for a period of 8 to 10 weeks. So what we're trying to do is maintain that, because they've already had a huge achievement in maintaining that physical activity through their cardiac rehab program. But then we have the problem solving as well, where we can look at the barriers, identify those barriers, but in this space come up with a specific plan to overcome those barriers in relation to achieving the goal that they've set for themselves. And as Kieran mentioned before, physical activity is one of the key behaviours that we're looking at, but we also really want to assess the person as a whole and think about the different risk factors. So we have smoking, alcohol, healthy eating, medication adherence, and stress management. So all of these behaviours are really important, and some of them are very salient for some individuals compared to others. So what we have is a lifestyle assessment questionnaire, which is composed of validated tools from the field for each of these behaviours. Okay? And Pauline can complete this online and then have a result delivered to her so that she can identify where potentially the areas that she needs to work on are. Okay, so this is what then results in a good habits visualization. So this is kind of what we decided to call it, because we wanted it to be quite a positive thing, because there are things that Pauline can be doing very well on. She could be having a recommended level of alcohol, her alcohol levels could be in line with guidelines, but she could have some of the behaviours in the room for improvement category. So in relation to our stress management, perhaps there's some scope there for her to take more time for herself. But also we need to identify behaviours that are at a high threshold that need to make a change. But importantly, what I think is a very key part of this is that these are presented to Pauline in a kind of a pleasing visual way, and Pauline can make the choice as to what one she wants to go ahead with. So she has all of that information at her disposal, but she gets to choose which goal she wants to move ahead with. Obviously, physical activity is the one that is compulsory due to the pathway, but the other behaviours she can choose from herself. And just say she chooses smoking, and she is then brought to a behavioural change assessment, because we can see that the behaviour could be an issue for her. She could score quite highly, but maybe she's not ready to change that behaviour just yet. Okay? So this is where we have a traffic light system, and this is based on the work of Michael Vallis. And these 4 questions, which are kind of based around motivational interviewing, and they're quite simple questions that really dig into whether she's ready to change that behaviour. So for example, we'll go with the green group, which we're hoping that somebody is ready to change. So is this behaviour a problem for you? She can say yes or no. Are you distressed by this problem? Are you interested in making a change? And are you ready to make a change now? So if she answered yes to those 4 questions, she'll be directed to a goal. But potentially, she might not be ready for this. Maybe she is not ready to make a change, even though it was recommended to her. So what she can do is be redirected to educational information for this, so that she can think about it and come back at a later stage and address her good habits. Okay. So we have these different areas. So just say if Pauline is redirected, she's not ready to make a change right now, she has all of this information at her disposal. She can look up tips and recommendations for physical activity, healthy eating, all the way down to medication adherence. So this is basic content in terms of the best practice guidelines for each of the behaviours. And kind of in a top 10 list, so very clear, concise information. But also the users, during the focus groups that we conducted on the content that we had developed, the users wanted the basic content very accessible so they could see that straight away, but they also wanted some advanced video content that they could really read up on further if they wanted more information, and they wanted to know that Pathway was a trusted source for that information. So there we have more, I suppose, advanced, potentially science content for like how the heart works, arteries videos, and expert videos as well with cardiac rehab staff, and with the Irish Heart Foundation and British Heart Foundation. And Pauline as well is able to log her goals as well. So this behaviour change aspect of this, of actually logging that behaviour, it's very important. So we have the ability to log it, but actually the process of Pauline being able to use Pathway as a food diary, as something that's monitoring her smoking, as well as her physical activity, that's extremely important for behaviour change. And then to actually be able to visualise and see that information that she has logged, that can be very powerful. So you can see here that a calendar can be displayed on the dashboard that shows the different types of entries that Pauline has made. But with the feedback that we received from the users during the focus groups was that they didn't want negative feedback particularly. They just wanted neutral information presented to them, and then they could interpret it how they wanted, because they didn't want it to be something that would tell them off or that would make them feel bad about themselves. So we have this visualization available for healthy eating, alcohol moderation, and smoking. And in terms of the kind of making Pathway a whole system, we also have the ability to send notifications to somebody's phone, email, or onto the Pathway system, depending on their preference. So this really allows Pathway to be used on the move and to get information all of the time if you want to. We were trialing with people how many messages they would actually like to get. So we had a range, and people were thinking that 1 a day is probably enough, that they didn't want any more than that. But they can adapt and turn off the messages if they want. So it's very user-centered. And the messages are triggered by rules that we have developed based on the information that we have sensed and logged from the patient. So all of the messages are linked back to everything that Pauline has got from her wrist-worn sensor or that she has logged herself. Okay. So these notifications, we have physical activity, healthy eating, alcohol, smoking, medication adherence and stress management. So we have notifications for all of the different behaviours. So just an example of one here of a decision support rule is that Pauline has completed 7 days on the food calendar, so an applaud message is sent. So well done on trying your best with your goal this week. It is certainly not easy, but you did it. Keep it going for the next week. So we have a library of messages, hundreds of messages actually, for all the different behaviours. And each of these messages we have mapped to behaviour change techniques. So all of the messages might identify social support as the main thing that they're pushing to somebody, or it might identify that they're giving information on health consequences. So every single message that is being delivered to Pauline and the different people that I've met, it can be very difficult to maintain this behaviour, even with all that help. Okay, so that's why we've also come up with a plan for patients that are not meeting their exercise prescription. So we have notifications that are alerted to a patient after a couple of weeks of not using Pathway. But also we change the way that Pathway is delivered each week when we see that somebody is not engaging. So setting a graded task is crucial for the patient. So we adjust their exercise prescription to a personal goal as well, so that they can try and re-engage with the system. So we're never setting them goals that they're not able to achieve. So for us then, the next step is the randomised control trial, which is next year, 2017. And the design is a single-blind parallel two-group pilot or CT. And we're conducting it in the 2 hospitals in Dublin and in Leuven in Belgium. And the main aim is feasibility, safety and the preliminary findings. So this is just a map of how we're going to evaluate the system. So as you can see here, this is the familiarization stage that Kieran was speaking about in the hospital. And then this is from where they start to begin with using Pathway and where the behaviour change aspects are coming in with the lifestyle assessment and the clinical consultation and notifications. Okay, so that's everything. Thank you very much. If you want to have any questions, I think we have time for questions. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I just ask, in terms of inclusion there, who would be paying for this system? Would the patient, or would it be government paying for the system? Like, would it be, you know, across socioeconomic backgrounds? Will people from the lower socioeconomic backgrounds be able to afford this kind of system?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. We have to be realistic, and to be realistic, at the moment, the government and hospitals don't pay for phase 3 cardiac rehabilitation. So whatever we put in place, I can't envisage in the first instance that there'll be any funding available for it. Okay. So this system would have to be commercialised for it to happen, and therefore there will be a cost associated with it. And I have no doubt then it would impact negatively on those on very low socioeconomic groups. And now, if it was shown to be hugely successful and reduce the long-term cost of care, then there's an argument to go back to the government and healthcare systems to try and get funding for those in the lower socioeconomic groups. But in the first instance, the only way this will work is via commercialisation. Okay. Excellent. Thanks very much for everyone for attending.